we'll study disorders of heme synthesis once again, and for here we'll study the basics of heme synthesis. Uh, we know that what is heme, how this is heme produced. So again, we are going to know heme production and some disorders related to the heme. Okay, I know you all know about hemoglobin, right? Hemoglobin, also known as in small abbreviation, we write HB. Okay, and it's a hemoprotein, or also called as conjugated protein, right? Because here we will see the structure, the protein part, which is bound with the non-proteinous part. Okay, so heme is a non-proteinous part, and the protein that is present in the hemoglobin is a globin protein, where alpha globin, beta globin, okay, chains are there. So these globin chains bind with the heme and it makes a hemoglobin. Okay, and because of that we say hemoglobin is a heme protein or conjugated protein. Hemoglobin is found in the cytoplasm of erythrocytes. Okay, RBC, red blood cell erythrocyte, which has a function to transport oxygen. So this hemoglobin is only found in the erythrocyte, basically in the cytoplasm. And what is the role? It transports oxygen and carbon dioxide between lungs and various tissues. So as you know, this is the function of hemoglobin. And normal concentration of hemoglobin in the blood is, like adult males, is 13.5, or we can say 14 to 16, or 13.5 to 16.5 gram per day. In female, it is a 12 to 14, or 12 to 14.8 gram per day. So the values are slightly variable according to lab or textbook to textbook. So in a general, you can learn this concentration of the hemoglobin in the blood. This is the structure of hemoglobin. Can you see this structure? Here we have this general structure which is designed here, and this general structure shows that we have this globin protein. Okay, these are 4 globin proteins which are shown in the helical structure, and inside the pocket of this globin protein, this is the globin protein. In the pocket of globin protein, we can see the pocket is like pocket-like structure, which is a heme. The heme is a non-proteinous part, and the globin chain is a proteinous part of the hemoglobin. Okay, and this is the three-dimensional structure of the what we say the hemoglobin, where we have 2 alpha chain, alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2. So these are the thread-like structure, which is a globin chain, alpha globin chain and beta globin chain. Okay, and in the pocket of the globin chain, you can see in each globin chain, in beta 1, beta 2, alpha 2, alpha 1, what we see, there is a pocket like structure where there is a what we call as a heme group or heme. The heme is they are located in the pocket of globin chain. Okay, this is the what we have understand the structure. Now 200 to 300 million molecules of hemoglobin molecules are present in our red cells. So this is the what the expected concentration or number of hemoglobin in a single cell. See, if you study the single cell red cell, we will find 200 300 million molecules of hemoglobin. Okay, and the hemoglobin of adults is a tetramer. What do we say? Tetramer. What is a tetramer? It means there are 4 monomeric proteins. So there are this 1, 2, 3, 4 proteins are there. Monomeric proteins are there. Whereas 2 is alpha and 2 is a beta. Okay. So alpha 1, alpha 2 is a alpha globin chains, and beta 1 and beta 2 is a beta globin chains. Each globin contain one heme group with a central iron, which is in the form of ferrous iron form. So there is a iron in the heme. Okay? So in each globin pocket there is a one heme group, and in the heme at the center there is a iron. Okay, and the iron atom can reversibly bind with a one molecule of oxygen. So this is the function of iron, that it can reversibly bind with the oxygen. It can bind and it can separate oxygen molecules. So binding, when it bind with the oxygen, when iron binds with oxygen, so the hemoglobin become oxyhemoglobin. When there is no oxygen bound to the hemoglobin, then we say it's a deoxyhemoglobin. Okay. So hemoglobin, the structure of heme. Now we are going to know the heme structure in a single heme molecule, which is a cyclic tetrapyrrole. There are 4 pyrrole rings are there. 1, 2, 3, 4 pyrrole rings are there, and this tetrapyrrole ring is a cyclic structure, and we define heme is a metalloporphyrin. It's a metalloporphyrin. Why we are saying metalloporphyrin? Because there is a one metal iron, which is encased into the structure of the porphyrin ring. Okay, and together with the iron, with this metal, it is called as a heme. Okay, so this is the heme structure. Okay, in the structure of heme, it contains one porphyrin with the one iron. Okay, so one porphyrin has a one iron, right? And this porphyrin, if you see the structure of porphyrin now, so porphyrin are cyclic molecule. So it's a cyclic ring-like molecule. It's a closed structure, and this porphyrin is formed by 4 pyrrole rings. So 1, 2, 3, 4 pyrrole rings are there, which are linked by methylene bridges. So this is the methylene bridge. This is the methylene bridge between the pyrrole ring. Okay, and there are 8 side chains are there, 2 on each pyrrole ring. So 2 on each pyrrole ring there are side chains. You see the side chains on each pyrrole rings, and this side chain in the pyrrole ring may be acetyl, propionyl, methyl, and vinyl. So the very most common side chain in the hemoglobin is the propionyl. This is what we can see: propionyl, methyl, vinyl. Propionyl, methyl, vinyl, methyl, vinyl. Okay, so there is no acetyl here, but some of the porphyrin also contain acetyl as a side chain, and may contain other group as a side chain. Okay, like the porphyrin is found in different other molecules, not only in the hemoglobin. It can be found in the chlorophyll. It can be found in the other cytochrome protein. Properties of iron in heme. So you can see this is the how it looks like. This is the nitrogen of porphyrin which has bound to the iron. Okay, so iron has bound linked. How this iron is linked, we are going to know more about this. Nitrogen atom of 4 pyrrole ring can form complex with metal like iron and magnesium. So here this is the iron. Magnesium can be found in the chlorophyll. So iron, when this is bind to the nitrogen atom of the pyrrole ring, okay. So this complex is, it makes a complex structure. Okay. So in this complex structure, we can see that the number of coordinate bonds with iron in heme becomes 6. So though the 4 bonds are the 6 out of 6 bonds, 4 bonds are with the pyrrole ring. Okay, this 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 nitrogen of each pyrrole rings has bonded with iron. So 4 bonds coordinate with the nitrogen of each pyrrole ring, and one of the bond is linked to a protein. So this is the protein, globin protein, and the fourth and then 1/5, and then the last 6th is bond is linked to oxygen. You can see this is linked to oxygen. So iron can bond, make a 6 coordinate bond. Okay, it can bind with the 6 different atoms. So 4 with the pyrrole ring, 5th with the this nitrogen of histidine of this globin protein. It can be alpha 1, it can be alpha 2, it can be beta 1, it can be beta 2. So this protein can also bind with histidine residues to this iron, and we count the number of coordinate bond. So we can see this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5th, and this is lastly this is oxygen. it has bound. So now this is called oxyhemoglobin, because this iron has bound to the oxygen. So there are 6 bonds over here, and it can be converted to deoxyhemoglobin when oxygen is uh, discharged into the tissues. So here we have only 5 coordinate bonds. Still one bonds which is looking for the oxygen can have affinity to bind to the oxygen. Okay, so this is deoxyhemoglobin and this is oxyhemoglobin. In the oxyhemoglobin there are 6 coordinate bonds are there. In deoxyhemoglobin there are only 5 coordinate bonds are there, right? So iron can binds with the 6 coordinate bond in the heme. Okay, and in which compound can we find the heme group? So what are the compounds which are available in the nature that contain the heme group? So here the hemoproteins, heme group, heme is found in the hemoproteins. Okay, so hemoproteins such as hemoglobin, myoglobin, which is present in the muscle, cytochrome proteins, which are present in the electron transport chain, in the mitochondria, and catalase, which are found in the most of the time in the liver cell, white blood cells. Okay, and then peroxidase, these are the oxidative enzymes. Tryptophan pyrrolase, these are the enzymes found in the liver. Okay, so these are the hemoproteins. Okay, which contain heme group. Okay, so we cannot say that heme proteins are found only in the hemoglobin, but there are other molecules which can also contain the heme group. And you have to remember that apart from hemoglobin, there's hemoglobin, myoglobin, cytochrome proteins, catalase, peroxidase, and tryptophan pyrrolase can also contain this heme structure, right? Heme biosynthesis. Heme biosynthesis. Now, how this heme biosynthesis takes place? 85% heme synthesis occurs in bone marrow, right? And 50% of heme synthesis takes place in liver and muscles, mainly in liver and muscles. And the cell location, basically mitochondria and in cytoplasm, both compartments are involved in the synthesis of these heme molecules. Okay, so it has a metabolic chain like reaction. So many enzymatic reaction takes place, and that reaction either occurs in the mitochondria or in the cytoplasm, and together it helps to synthesize the heme in the cell. Okay, now substrate, what we require for heme biosynthesis? So what the precursor, what is the precursor for this heme biosynthesis? So this is the glycine and this is the succinyl coenzyme, the two biomolecules which acts as a precursor molecule for the synthesis of heme in our cell. Okay, and very important intermediates which are produced during the production of heme are delta aminolevulinic acid, porphobilinogen, uroporphyrinogen third, and protoporphyrin 9. Okay, so these are 4 very important intermediates which are synthesized during the heme biosynthesis, right? So delta aminolevulinic acid is a first compound produced from succinyl coenzyme and glycine, and porphobilinogen is the one of the intermediate, and this is the derivative of pyrrole ring. So from here the pyrrole rings are made. And uroporphyrinogen third is a precursor of heme synthesis. Okay, from here we can get a heme molecule, and protoporphyrin 9 from 9 we can directly get as a heme biosynthesis. Okay, so directly from protoporphyrin 9, when the iron is added here, so we get a heme. Okay, but uroporphyrinogen when third, when this is made in the cell, so this can be further act as a starting material or a precursor to synthesize heme in the cells. Okay, so now key regulatory enzyme here, delta aminolevulinic acid synthase. This is one of the very important enzyme which synthesizes, which catalyzes the first reaction of the heme biosynthesis by combining succinyl coenzyme and glycine to produce delta aminolevulic acid. This one. So this enzyme is a regulatory enzyme. If the enzyme is activated, then we can synthesize the step-by-step process of heme. Otherwise, if this enzyme is inactive, then what will happen? The entire process, which we start from this succinyl coenzyme and glycine, so it will not be catalyzed. It will not be, it will not make the product as a delta aminolevulic acid because the enzyme may be inactive. Okay. So coming to the heme synthesis pathway, we can see the very important part of this pathways here. First reaction of heme synthesis. You can see the first reaction where glycine and succinyl coenzyme A, it makes delta aminolevulic acid. So this reaction takes place in the mitochondria. Okay, and the enzyme that is required is a ELA synthase. That is a delta aminolevulic acid synthase, and this requires pyrrole phosphate. Okay, as a cofactor. Next, very important thing is ELA once produced in the mitochondria, it leaves the mitochondria and goes to the cytoplasm. So after this next reaction occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. Okay, where we can see the two molecules of delta aminolevulic acid, they are fused together and it condenses together to produce a porphobilinogen. Right? It produces what? Porphobilinogen. And here we can see that porphobilinogen is a precursor for pyrrole ring. This is a word. This is the precursor which make one pyrrole ring, and we can see that 4 molecules of porphobilinogen together combines to produce uroporphyrinogen third. So porphobilinogen become uroporphyrinogen third through one intermediate compound, and two enzymatic reaction. Two enzymes are involved in this process that convert porphobilinogen to uroporphyrinogen third by one of the first enzyme, uroporphyrinogen first synthase, and the second enzyme, uroporphyrinogen third co-synthase. The two enzymes are involved in the making of uroporphyrinogen third from porphobilinogen. Okay. Coproporphyrinogen third returns to the mitochondria again. So here we have seen here in the pathway that coproporphyrinogen, once we get from this uroporphyrinogen third, okay, so this intermediate compound returns to the mitochondria now from the cytosol. Okay, and from here we get protoporphyrin third, then we get protoporphyrin third, and finally iron is incorporated into the protoporphyrin third, and it becomes heme. So this is what the heme synthesis pathway. I hope you have understand. If you have any question, you can ask me here. Okay, we can stop with the next slide. If you have any question, please ask me. Do you have any question? Yes. Any question? Any question? Hello. Can you hear my voice? No?
Yes, sir.
समझ में आ रहा है? समझ में आया कैसे ही बनता है? No response. Now let's talk about disorders of heme synthesis. We also call it as a porphyrias. Okay, porphyrias is another term that we use for disorders of heme synthesis. So this is a group of inherited or acquired disease. Okay, so if it is inherited, we call it as a primary porphyria that we studied in the previous lecture. If it is acquired, then we call it as a secondary porphyria. Okay, and each porphyria is characterized by a partial defect in one of the enzyme of heme synthesis. So we have studied in the pathway that there are several enzymes are involved to synthesize heme, but what we need to know that there are different porphyrias are there, and each porphyrias is characterized by a partial or a specific defect in one of the enzyme. Okay, and this can be classified into two groups. So it can be hepatic type, it can be erythropoietic type. So the hepatic type of porphyrias occurs because of accumulation of the intermediates of heme in the hepatic tissues, whereas there is a deficiency of the enzyme for which heme synthesis takes place in the hepatic tissues. Okay, so erythropoietic porphyria is something like when there is accumulation of some intermediate compound because of lack of some enzyme in the making of red blood cells or hemoglobin. So it usually this enzyme deficiency takes place occurs in the bone marrow. Okay, so hepatic and erythropoietic porphyrias are there. What are hepatic porphyrias? So these are the major hepatic porphyrias are there. The first one we discussed yesterday is acute intermittent porphyria, which is because of deficiency of or lack of or abnormalities of this particular enzyme. What is the enzyme? Porphobilinogen deaminase. Second, it's a hereditary coproporphyria, which is because of a deficiency or defect in this particular enzyme, coproporphyrin oxidase. And the third, porphyria variegate, which is due to protoporphyrinogen oxidase deficiency, and the porphyria cutanea tarda, PCT. We also discussed this porphyria yesterday, and we know that this is the porphyrias, which is because of the defect in the enzyme, basically uroporphyrinogen decarboxylase. Okay. Erythropoietic porphyrias. What is erythropoietic porphyrias? These are congenital erythropoietic porphyrias, which occurs because of a defect in uroporphyrinogen oxidase. And lastly, we have erythropoietic protophyria, which is because of furosolitase enzyme defect. Okay, so we have different types of porphyria, which are grouped into hepatic and erythropoietic, and we can see that all of those porphyrias are because of defect in specific enzyme. Okay, so if there is a specific enzyme defect, then it causes different form of porphyria in the body. Now, coming to the congenital erythropoietic porphyria, let's study about this congenital erythropoietic porphyria today. And here we know that this is a rare autosomal recessive disorder, right? And reduced uroporphyrinogen third synthase activity due to mutation in the encoding gene. So here there is a reduce in the activity of this particular enzyme, uroporphyrinogen third synthase. So this particular enzyme, uroporphyrinogen third synthase, when the activity of this enzyme is decreased due to mutation in this enzyme gene, then congenital erythropoietic porphyria takes place. Okay, here males and female equally affected. So both male and female are equally affected. Age of onset is variable, but typically seen in infants and children. So here it can occur in any age, but mainly infant age or children age are usually more prevalent. Okay. Now, clinical presentation of this congenital erythropoietic porphyria. So it's a highly variable. Clinical presentation is highly variable. It's not a fixed type. And here it's characterized by cutaneous photosensitivity and dermatitis, right? So the patient may suffer from rashes on the skin, okay, or there is a inflammation or of the skin, okay, which can be the mild to severe condition. Okay, the spontaneous oxidation of accumulated porphyrinogen to photoactive porphyrin. So this is the one of the mechanisms because of which usually we can see some changes in the product, like spontaneous oxidation of accumulated porphyrinogen. So this porphyrinogen, which is accumulated, so they are usually oxidized spontaneously because of uh, the sunlight. Okay, so when the sunlight is when there is a sunlight exposure to sunlight, so this porphyrinogen which are accumulated in the tissues, so they are oxidized in the presence of sunlight and it becomes porphyrins. Okay, and there is a hemolytic anemia. Okay, what is hemolytic anemia? This is the anemia where red blood cells are lying. Okay, and this hemolytic anemia may be mild or too severe with the resultant splenomegaly or osseous fragility. So here hemolytic anemia occurs, and this type of anemia can be mild to severe level type of disorder. Okay, severe condition can cause mild condition to severe condition, and this may result into splenomegaly. What it means that there is enlargement of the spleen, and there is osseous fragility. The bone may become fragile here. Okay, so this is the clinical presentation we can see. In addition to this, we also have a hypertrichosis, where the patient condition is that causes excessive hair growth all over the body. Okay, so there is excessive hair growth. Okay, and because of that, it is sometimes referred to as a werewolf syndrome. Okay, werewolf syndrome is a condition where there is excessive hair growth in all over the body, right? So this is hypertrichosis. It can also be seen when there is a congenital erythropoietic porphyria. Now, next, very common is a port wine colored urine. So urine color become the wine colored urine. So it's a specific wine that is a porty wine, and the wine, that particular wine color urine may be produced by the patient. Hydrops fetalis. So this is the one of the abnormalities which occurs to the fetus which are developing into the womb of the mother. So hydrops fetalis is the where the fetus becomes enlarged, okay, and having a lot of water inside the body. Okay, hydrops fetalis, and this may be because of immune reactions or maybe because of this congenital erythropoietic porphyria, right? And the blepharitis, conjunctivitis, corneal scarring, and blindness. These all are related to the eye problem. Okay, here blepharitis is an inflammation of eyelids. Okay, conjunctivitis is an inflammation of conjunctiva. Corneal scarring, the cornea is scared, and there may be the blindness. Okay, so scaring of the cornea can occur. The blindness may occur. So these are the what we say the clinical presentation by the patient suffering from congenital erythropoietic porphyria. And here, lastly, you can see there is an increased amount of uroporphyrin and coproporphyrin in bone marrow, red cells, plasma, urine, and feces. So this, you can see that these two specific molecules, the concentration become very higher. Okay, this compounds may accumulate in the bone marrow, red cells, plasma, urine, and become material. Okay, and how can we manage this congenital erythropoietic area? So here we can say that the patient should avoid to the sunlight, and splenectomy can be done, which can helps to improve red cell survival. And in this splenectomy is only partially effective, not completely effective. Okay. Then high level blood transfusion and iron chelation therapy can be done, which can suppress erythropoiesis and can subsequently improve the symptoms, what we see the symptoms actually. And lastly, we can see that allogenic bone marrow transplantation has been successful. Okay, so allogenic something means the allogenic bone marrow transplantation is a bone marrow transplantation basically taken from different individual of the same species. Okay, so normally what we need to do during transplantation, there should be the bone marrow compatibility that should be done, but incompatible bone marrow transplantation gives successful result with the congenital erythropoietic porphyria. here okay, erythropoietic protoporphyria. We'll continue this in the next lecture. Today here we'll end this slide here for today. And now let's discuss. If you have any question, we are open to all of you. Okay. Question, please. Please have a question. Ask question if you have.